today. We're here, I'm Debbie Ward, I'm Catherine's sister, so we're here to just acknowledge Catherine, her life, celebrate what she meant to all of us, and I think, by the volume of people here, it meant a lot to a lot of people and touched many lives. Just before I'll do the health and safety. Obviously fire exits, one over there, one where you came in. I don't think we've got any fire wardens, but there's probably a few that have been fire wardens, so you can pretend that you're going to be one if you need to. A few wards. Toilets either side of the entrance as you came in if you're not familiar with the hall. And clearly if there's an earthquake, you could try drop, cover and hold, but that might be a bit difficult for all of us. And this building, I think, has been here for quite a few decades, so and quite a few earthquakes, I'm sure we'll be fine. So do that. We would ask if you've got a cell phone just to put it on silent or vibrate, just so that we don't get disturbed during the event. Now Catherine, for those that know Catherine, would say there are no rules and there are no plans. We're trying to keep true to that in terms of having no rules. Just would request that maybe if you do speak, that you keep it to 3 or 5 minutes. So there's a little bit of leeway in there in terms of no rules, but and no planning, and we just make it up on the day, which is hopefully what we've done in terms of that's how Catherine would do it if she had the opportunity and how she would get things organised. So what we have, just the welcome, we have a few speakers lined up, and then we'll open the floor if anyone wants to say anything. And then we have just a closure, bless the food, and then we've got some afternoon tea to share. And if anybody wants to go and toast Catherine later on, Andrew and Pam Shackleton have made their place available for you to go along, bring something and toast her if you want to toast Catherine. And I'll give you the address at the end for their place. So what I'd just like to open, just start with a reading. She's in the sun, the wind, the rain. She's in the air you breathe, with every breath you take. She sings a song of hope and cheer. There's no more pain, no more fear. You'll see her in the clouds above. Hear her whisper words of love. And you'll be together before long. Until then, listen for a song. Richard and
Thank you, Debbie, and all the plans or unplans, and thinking obviously it's a time when we're going to be able to share memories and definitely remember Catherine and the memories are going to bring after and tears, sadness and Thanksgiving. My name's Richard, I'm another of the siblings, so little bits of intro. Obviously Debbie's here, and Gary, her husband, is somewhere, and there too, Jess and Zach doing technical assistance down there. I'm the next of the siblings, so of course the order was Catherine, then Debbie. Myself, my wife Nikki's down the back, our eldest daughter Natalie's hiding at the very back, and we have 3 others, Rebecca, Amelia and Ruben, who weren't able to be with us today. And then Michael here, youngest, and his wife Monique's down there, and we've got getting waves from the very back. Reese, Savannah, Jordan, and a couple of partners are with them as well. So on behalf of the family, welcome to you all here. It's great to see you, and also to acknowledge Chris here with his daughter Carol, and a number of your family members who are multiplying since I met them up last night. So welcome to those of you from Chris's family. It's great for me to actually put faces to the names that we've heard of for so many years. And recognising that a lot of you have travelled a good distance. I know we came down from Auckland, but clearly Chris is back over from the Chathams. And some of you who are still solidly local, but for those who've travelled, thanks for coming to be with us today. I just want to offer a little bit of an outline of Catherine's life, because we're going to hear different people sharing and speaking from portions of her engagement with them or with the community, and that's really cool to hear. But often what happens is we come to a memorial time like this, and it's helpful to get a framework, if you like, we can hang our own memories on, and kind of to fill in the gaps too, because often we haven't known a person throughout their whole life. So let me share a bit of an outline, which was also, by the way, shared at a similar gathering to this that was held over on the Chathams 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
Yes.
So again, there was a big community gathering there, and an opportunity to remember Catherine and her engagement in the community in that space, and that was a wonderful tribute and an expression of support for Catherine and Chris. So, yeah, if anyone's watching from the Chathams, because we are going live, thank you to the community over there for the support that you've given to. So Catherine, as I've mentioned, was the eldest of the 4 children. She lived initially in Katikati, where Dad had his first job as a veterinary surgeon after settling back in New Zealand. He'd gone over to Sydney to train because, of course, Massey Vet School hadn't opened back then. And like a number of New Zealand veterinary students, he ended up with an Australian wife. So Mum was training as a nurse in Sydney. They met, they married and settled back in New Zealand. Of course, Katikati, that was the days before kiwi fruit were invented, and it was a land of dairy farms. The growing family moved first to Masterton and then in 1964 down here to Martinborough, as Dad took up successive appointments and then eventually buying out the veterinary club practice to make it a private practice and his own. And so Martinborough became home to our family and of course to Catherine as she lived here until she and Chris made that move to the Chathams. It was 8 years ago. As the eldest child, Catherine pioneered the way for the rest of us, her siblings. She set an example for us to follow, and at schools a reputation to be compared to. From the beginning she's been a supportive big sister to Debbie, myself and Michael. Growing up on what would now be called a lifestyle block, just down the road, just on Jellicoe Street. And with Dad's work, animals were a very big part of her life, whether it was taking turns feeding the pigs or the chooks, helping to butcher a sheep, or trying to ride Guy and Tuppence, the horses that we had the care of. It wasn't a surprise that Catherine got involved in the Young Farmers Club, nor that at the end of her secondary schooling that she decided to study agriculture at Lincoln College. However, that course required a certain amount of practical farming experience prior to entry into the course itself. So Catherine set out and made the most of local networks to get a job. She also got her first car, a light blue Austin A60 van, and Clem is here somewhere. Thank you for teaching us how to make it backfire spectacularly. That was quite. She also got her first dog, Ben. Ben was one of a litter of 13 pups that Dad had delivered by a caesarean section in the surgery in the clinic just down the road. And it was an event which involved the whole family as we took turns receiving a delivered puppy, massaging that puppy into a regular breathing pattern before placing them on the heat pad and returning for the next one. After Catherine hand-raised Ben, I don't remember him becoming an outstanding sheepdog under her care, but he was a very friendly pet. Over the years, Catherine's focus on animals grew, and with Chris's support, it included cats, Highland cattle, donkeys, and of course the greyhounds. I can remember Catherine working on at least 2 farms, but she sometimes seemed to be more the farm family's babysitter than the trainee shepherd. But I think that was also an indication that she was great with children, always saying that she was happy just to borrow them so that she could give them back. In 1980, her hunt for another farming position found her working for a former dairy farmer, Clive Payton, who was creating Artarangi, one of the first vineyards in Martinborough. She put aside her idea of studying agriculture and instead worked alongside Clive and other of the wine pioneers of the region, helping to bring their dreams into reality. and along the way learning everything she needed to know about managing a productive vineyard. After a time, she moved to another of the new vineyards, the larger Te Karenga, where she also gained the skill and knowledge to become assistant winemaker before moving on to Gladstone Vineyard. On these vineyards, she also eventually moved into the more administrative roles of event managing, sales and shipping, the latter being skills that she was able to use in her position in Moana Fisheries over in the Chathams. Along the way, she also sold Tupperware, gained her bar licence and lived in and ran one of the local dairies here in Martinborough. Involvement in the local community was something that Catherine hugely valued and put immense energy into. That meant she was a great source of local information on people and events, and I know that some would denigrate this by calling it gossip, but it was generally helpful information. She would also lend her time and skills, her networking and energy to community events. Her community contributions began in her teens when she was a Sunday school teacher here, because this was where we as a family spent a lot of time engaging in the activities of church as we grew up. She was sometimes soccer coach, sometimes later on a cub leader, before moving on over the years to putting time and energy into the local play centre, into church community events including flower shows and fairs. But perhaps the most public of these activities was her role as a volunteer ambulance officer and driver with St John's. This involved significant training to the level that she sometimes filled in at the emergency department in Masterton Hospital. It also meant that she got to take the ambulance home for evenings and weekends, which was a huge thrill for certain of her nieces and nephews who got to sit in it and sometimes have a ride. And this was in the time when she and Chris were living on their own lifestyle block, just on the hills south of Martinborough, so she'd take the ambulance home in case there was a call out. Throughout her life, Catherine was prepared to follow her interests and her passions, to give things a go and to learn along the way, to value people and relationships and to put the time and energy into making things happen. These are the characteristics and values that she took into her relationship with Chris, as together they developed their property here in Martinborough up on the hill, and again when they embarked on their adventure to the Chatham Islands. In the weeks before she died, Catherine had her 63rd birthday, and she and Chris celebrated 30 years of marriage. And Chris, as we were going, you might have all seen, if you didn't beforehand, you'll see afterwards the photos scrolling through. And didn't we look young and impressive back then? It's been great to have you as part of the family, Chris, for this period of time that seems to have flown by. And we know that together you and Catherine were welcomed into the Chatham Island community. And we greatly appreciate the expressions of love and support that this community have given to you both through the time on the island, and particularly during Catherine's illness and in the weeks since her death. So it's been good to see those tributes online and things coming from over there. Chris, we know that you and Catherine still had plans and dreams that you were going to work on to make realities over there, but we know by her involvement in that community, as in here in Martinborough, that she has enriched the lives of many through her work and through her loving friendships. Finally, I want to thank any of you who've contributed to the online tributes page for Catherine. The tributes have been printed out, and I think they're on a table in the foyer, or you can go online to read them. And the encouragement also is, if you'd like to add tributes, there's still space to do that. There are some posters up down the back of the hall and on the walls in the foyer that gives a bit more information on that. So it's worth a read, and if you've got things to share, it's a way that we can capture what you are sharing. So a little bit on outline, we're going to hear some more memories and experiences that are shared, and these are going to become memories and treasures for us too, that we too can take from this place and be enriched by by Catherine's life, by her activities, by her engagement with so many other people in all sorts of relationships. And so, yeah, words from me as we gather and say goodbye to a sister, a daughter who's been much loved and greatly appreciated.
I'd like to invite Jenny to come up. Jenny features in the photos as the bridesmaid, and yeah, as one of Catherine's oldest friends. Catherine, our gentle, kind, unassuming friend, was a quiet force of nature, always calm amidst the chaos. Nothing was a problem or too hard. When Catherine was on board with an idea, she made sure it would work and of course be a roaring success. We might have been the face of the event, but it was actually Catherine, working quietly in the background, who truly made it happen. Catherine was one of my oldest friends. We lived just a couple of doors down the road from each other on Panama Street and went to Martinborough Primary School together. We drifted apart during our college years, and afterwards, while I was working and living in Wellington, running the world in my OE, Catherine, meanwhile, was in her happy place, Martinborough. It wasn't until I returned to live back here in '91 that we resumed our friendship. Catherine called to say she had found me a flat with 3 lads. Around this time, she also embarked on producing another version of the infamous Martinborough cookbook, which her mother had edited in 1972. Typing and trialling the recipes to ensure anyone could replicate them, our flat was fortunate enough to enjoy the results for weeks. Catherine also had a green thumb. Anything she liked, she grew from a cutting. Her veggie garden was full of interesting salad leaves, and in winter, all sorts of unique vegetables. Flowers were another passion, and there was always fresh vases in her home or arranged as gifts. I was humbled to be Catherine's bridesmaid at her marriage to Chris in April '95. I was 7.5 months pregnant at the time, and she just laughed and told me to hold the floral bouquet in front of my tummy. That November, she returned the favour and was one of my bridesmaids. Catherine loved to learn new skills. She enrolled us both in night school, woodworking classes at Karanui. It was great fun, though it required a bit of logistic juggling, as it was in the same night as Troy's rugby practice down the valley. Pack the kids in the car, pick up 2 others on the way into town, drop me at Catherine's, there was always dinner on the table, Chris had made, drop the kids at my parents', pick up the kids, drop the lads at the Pukimanu, pick me up, and I would drive us all home. Repeat weekly for 10 weeks. I loved it, and I made it actually a bench seat. In January this year, we spent the afternoon having a wonderful catch-up at the Run Holder, reminiscing about our days at TK with Chris Burring, Tom Draper, Dennis Hanson and Rosanna Hall. We laughed when the cellar door salesperson proudly declared the rear view of the tasting room was a feature. Apparently, we were meant to be awestruck by the natural state of the farmland in Eastern Hills, but all we could see was blackberry and weeds. We shared a laugh over a glass of Chardonnay. We talked about our anniversaries and what we thought we should do, and I promised to get over to the Chathams to visit her and Chris at their new property. Didn't quite got to meet Chris. Catherine led by example. She showed us what it means to be a calm presence in a storm, to choose empathy over judgment, and to live with integrity and purpose. Catherine, my oldest and dearest friend, thank you for being my bestie. From the first day we met to my last visit, you never once complained. You may no longer be here, but your kindness and friendship will continue to support us all who were so fortunate enough to call you a friend. You will forever remain our hearts and our thoughts. And thank you, Mrs. Ward, for sharing this. Thank you, Jenny. So I'd like to invite Andrew to chat to come up just a bit about Catherine's time in the winery industry, or TK. Not quite sure which one, but no.
Whose phone's here?
Oh, it's
Oh,
not.
is it a wallet? Glasses, getting old. Firstly, it's interesting how you do learn in these occasions something about people that you do know, but you learn more about them and a lot of the things you don't know. So I wasn't actually aware, Richard, that Catherine had worked for Clive and Phil at Atarangi prior to joining Tikaranga. So I'm going to have to rewrite my whole speech. Not quite. Anyway, firstly, thank you for this opportunity to speak and reflect on Catherine's years working in the wine industry. I actually inherited Catherine when I took over Tikaranga back in '93, and really, Catherine does have the distinction of being one of the first workers in that fledgling industry. Now, I thought she was working for Tikaranga in that early time, but again, I found out that she was working for Atarangi. So really, it was right at the grassroots and the early years. But from Tikaranga's point of view, a little bit of history here, because it was Tom and Robin Draper who employed Catherine. And I don't think Robin's here. She put it in an apology, I think. But they bought the original Tikaranga vineyard land back in 1984. And it may surprise some of you here, and others it won't surprise, but the very first vines that were planted in Martin were planted on that land by the infamous charlatan, Alistair Taylor. And so Catherine did start alongside those first vines. I've taken a little bit of poetic license here too. The vines were rubbish. They were planted in the wrong place and they never lasted. But she was there alongside them. Now, in the endearing sense of the word, she was the quintessential land girl and in her element. And that was exactly what was required in those pioneering days. And I have spoken to Robin, who reflected on the skill set required. A number 8 wire can-do attitude, resourcefulness and determination, not losing your sense of humour, the desire to learn as you go, roll up your sleeves and get muddy. Each day a new challenge, and I nearly forgot there was never enough money. Mind you, things haven't changed. It didn't change much at Tikaranga after that, or for the industry for that matter, but anyway. Now Glenys, who worked with Catherine in those first years, gave me some reflections she had. How Catherine was able to drive a tractor down the road while spraying, and she could simultaneously read a book, and she could synchronise turning at the end of the row at the other end with turning the page of the Catherine could multitask. One occasion, Glenys also mentioned, they were charged with painting the cottage. Tom had disappeared somewhere. And the steep pitched roof was a real challenge. And Glenys recalls that she refused to go near it. And when she described to me how Catherine tackled it, I think the best description is one of a cat. Bear with me. And also understand that orange cones had yet to be invented, and this predated the clipboard wielding health and safety officer, right? So Catherine's technique, as Glenys described it, was to run up a truck which was parked alongside, leap up onto the guttering, run up the ridge, and then she would slide barefoot down the corrugated iron, painting the iron as she went. and on hitting the guttering, she would flip back down to the truck below and then repeat it. Now, there's something beautifully nostalgic about those pre-OSH days of yesteryear. As you've heard, Catherine would try anything, and consequently she worked in pretty much every department in the vineyard. Every department. So she worked in the vineyard, she worked in the winery, as has been mentioned, with Chris Buring. She worked at cellar door sales and with events. She worked in administration. She could drive a forklift and shovel out reed fermenters. She could rack barrels, prune vines, as well as roses. She could stock take, order packaging, do excise tax. I'll get to talk the nuances of Pinot Noir and chat away with customers in an easygoing, friendly, yet knowledgeable way. And as poacher turned gamekeeper, be the health and safety officer. With this skill set, she was an invaluable addition to the Gladstone team, where she worked for 5 years after leaving Tikaranga. Christine Kernahan, who apologises, she's at another occasion, reflected to me that she could do just about every job at the place, and she handled pressure really well. Nothing fazed her. And again, that's an attribute of Catherine's that's come out. Everybody has spoken previously. So she was a great asset to a small family winery operation with never enough money. So Catherine, you were very much part of this wine region's pioneering times that were tough, challenging, exciting, and for a girl of the land, your place. Go well, Catherine, with fondness. We will toast your memory with a nice glass of Martinborough wine.
And then just invite Catherine to come up and talk about a little bit about Catherine's time at St John's, because that played a significant part of her life here in Martinborough.
I'm another Catherine. The names seem to be very common when we're all working together. My connection with Catherine was through the ambulance service. Catherine was a volunteer, as we all were, and some still are. She had a long service history through the Wairarapa DHB, Masterton Hospital, St John and Wellington Free. Testament are her long service medals, which are on display here. She wore those and her uniform with pride. Catherine also served on the local St John Area Committee and the Martinborough and District's Ambulance Trust alongside her mother Rosemary and many others I can see in this room here. It is through the dedicated work of these people that Martinborough had its own ambulance and rooms here in town. These were fundraised for and staffed by qualified medics, and Catherine played major roles in both these areas. That is where I first met Catherine as an ambulance officer. Catherine and so many other faces here served proudly providing frontline ambulance services to our Wairarapa communities. I was privileged to join and be welcomed into this group, work alongside and learn from so many here. As a brand new ambulance officer, Catherine was more than happy to teach me and pass on her skills. She also taught me the importance of not only doing the best for our patients, but also for their families, at what for many could be a very scary and confronting time. Catherine was always the one to make sure family members knew what was happening, what they could do, and make sure any children didn't have to witness things that they shouldn't. Catherine had the biggest heart. She gave so much to her community and touched so many of us along the way. Living in Martinborough also meant that Catherine often knew her patients and their families personally. It was nothing for Catherine to tell them that she'd come back later and feed the cat, or if needed, we would actually stay behind after the transporting ambulance had taken the patient to hospital and clean up. The patient should never have to come back to this, Catherine would say, and she was right. So we'd clean up, do the washing and secure the place before we left. That's what we did in our small community, and Catherine led by example. I hope even in these PC days that I can continue to keep this up. Recently we attended a very elderly Martinborough resident who'd taken a fall. Our checks found she was okay and able to be left at home. I said to her after we settled her back on her couch, was there anything she needed? She admitted she was hungry because she hadn't been able to have any breakfast. So we made her breakfast. Toast and jam, a pot of tea, and we even made some porridge. We prepared it, made her comfy, and left her with easy access to her breakfast. I think Catherine would have been really proud of us. Martinborough was so lucky to have Catherine. We are all here as testament to the person she was. I loved getting to know her, to find out that she was an animal lover. She proudly told me her dad had been a local vet and stories of what she did in the clinic as a child. Catherine loved her greyhounds, retired ones who really showed no interest in going anywhere at speed and in fact were almost like big cats in disguise. She had donkeys and chickens. Animals were such a big part of her life. I think if you can relate well to animals and they trust you, then you must be a pretty awesome person. Catherine could relate so well to animals. Catherine was also a friend to so many of us. She was the babysitter, the cellar door greeter, the wine expert. She was our camp mum on St John events where she always turned up with yummy food for us and plenty of it. I remember when Catherine was going for her forklift licence, she needed it for her vineyard work. I suggested after she got it, we should venture over to P&K's and borrow theirs, as I'd love to go for a ride. I don't think she liked that idea, and I never did get that ride. But that achievement was another of the many skills Catherine had. She could turn her hand to so much. When I heard the news Catherine had been airlifted from the Chathams, I I had no idea that I would receive that phone call from Catherine's mum with the saddest of news. Catherine left us all far too soon. But even in this time of sadness, we can celebrate Catherine as a great friend to us, a work colleague, and the person with the biggest heart. Catherine, I was privileged to know and work with you and call you a friend. Cancer really does suck, and it should never have taken you from your family and us so soon. But I will, and I'm sure others here, will go forward with your memories so we can keep doing good in whatever ways we can. To Catherine's family, to Chris, to Rosemary, her brothers and sister and extended family, I cannot comprehend the sadness and grief you must be going through and have gone through. But please know, Catherine touched all of us here today in some way. We will all go away carrying her memory and her words in our hearts, so she will never be forgotten.
Thank you. Lovely. So now I'd just like to open the floor up if anyone else wants to come up and say anything or note anything.
I'd always like to do the awkward first and get it out the way. Then I could find the toddler again.
At the top of my phone,
Yeah.
Kia Humaria, my name's Bex. I'm Chris's and Kate's niece from Chris's side. I haven't prepared anything, I always wing these things, but it's hard to win my toddlers don't get distracted. Kat there has always been this bright spark to me. I still remember their wedding, being one of the first weddings I'd ever been to in my life, and then I don't think I went to another until my own. But yeah, I got to spend a bit of time growing up in Wairarapa, and spend time with Kath and Chris, and I just always loved Kath's sense of humour. It's definitely, I think, an acquired taste to some, but I could just see it, and the sparkle she always had that just showed that you just know a good person when you see one and you feel them. She actually, one of my memories from her is that she actually found out about an accident that I'd had before my parents did. And a teenage rebellion, I decided to do some car surfing and fell off, and I was just down the road from the St. John's ambulance bay, and so Catherine was one of the first to hear, because they were first on the scene. So unfortunately, as an adult, I haven't had a lot of time to spend with Kath and Chris, especially now in the Chathams, but she was a beautiful person, Chris, and yeah, that's about all I got.
Go on, I did the hard bit.
Anyone else?
Oh,
Yes.
My name's Stuart. We lived up on the hill across the valley from Catherine and Chris. We arrived in 2000 and not very many, or one or two, and we were introduced to Catherine. We were painting the inside of our newly built American barn, New York style apartment living in the country, and she was curious as to what colour we were going to be painting the inside, and how she actually stopped herself from coming over at the beginning of the project and rather than at the end, I don't know, but she did turn up at the end of the day, say, oh, that's bright, you obviously need to be eating, so we've cooked tea, come over to our place for tea, and my poor wife, she was a little bit taken aback, and she said, but we're covered in paint. Oh, there's no rules, come in your slippers, come as you are. And everybody knows that's exactly the Catherine we all knew and loved. And on the, that photo's inside our kitchen. She is in the process of saying something to my wife that shouldn't be said in a church premises. Because Catherine always came to our place when we were having a big party and made sure that the kitchen side of it went off without a hitch, and for that we will always be grateful. And one last little tale. I was out there playing my bagpipes one time, and needed to practice, so I was going for a while, and then the phone rang. Would you mind stopping playing the bagpipes? Very civil. I said, yeah, but of course. He says, we like the music, but the donkeys won't shut the up.
Might be a bit hard to beat that one, but. Has anyone else got anything else they'd like to say?
Hi, my name's David McLaughlin. Known Catherine and Chris and Ivan and Rosemary through the Wine Club in Fiddleston for quite a few years. Always enjoyed the mystery bottle Sundays we used to have out here in Martinborough, and always look forward to Catherine's cooking. But one of my stories is I had some kidney issues, and who turns up in the ambulance was Catherine to see me in all my glory. And travelling outside of Fiddleston to the hospital, they got another call, and Catherine turned around and said, we shouldn't really go back for this, but it's up to, but pretty much bugger the rules. And we did go back and pick up another chap who was having heart issues. So off we went to hospital with that. So she didn't follow the rules all the time. And yeah, just like to say, Chris, thanks for the times and stuff. Thanks, Catherine, Rosemary, and in memory of Ivan as well. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jess. I'm Debbie's eldest. I had the pleasure of spending a lot of time with Catherine over the years, and she was always that cool, fun auntie who had that wicked sense of humour and didn't use your given name and would always call you Fred instead, regardless. I have lots of fond memories of getting the pleasure of staying with Catherine and doing cooking and baking and hanging out with the donkeys, and she was always a very thoughtful person and made sure everyone was well looked after. The most recent being my wedding in January, which there's some photos of, where she brought over some beautiful crayfish and paua and made sure that the kitchen ran smoothly, which was amazing. And she has done lots of things for me over the years, such as setting me up with a horse to borrow so I could go to pony club camp, or she got me my first job as a dishie at Gladstone Winery in the restaurant, and then used to get roped in to help her by labelling and packaging wine, or removing labels and putting new labels on and packing 1 million boxes. She was always really great at finding things to do or places to run away from when things got a bit boring. And this could be slipping into the kitchen to prepare food, or one time we were at Nana's house and we decided bugger this and went off down the road to visit a friend, and I got to tag along. But yeah, I always hold these memories and many more in my heart, and as time goes forward. And yeah,
So thank you. Just before us, Rosemary and my mum, to come up and just say something, just a few fond memories of Catherine as my sister, older sister, paving the way, as Rich would said. Always good having someone older who would misbehave and set the rules, and sort of learning about life and going out, and definitely meant a lot. The main one was always be home on time, because if you weren't, we were going to get into big trouble. So thank you, Catherine, for setting those boundaries for us as we learnt life as a teenager and what it was like to go out. And she was always helping, never complaining. Nothing was ever a problem. And if you asked her how's things going and what the plan was, she'd just go, yep. And that was about it. It was about as much as she'd got from him. But she was always, she's very passionate about her garden, her cooking, her preserving, and she'd always be doing that and wanting to do that. And anything that she could put her hand to, as we've sort of heard a little bit, she would do that, and whether that be sewing, got a few items for the kids from her, and sewing, crafting, the gardening. You know, she would put her hand to it and do it really well. So very talented in that point of view. And that, as I said, nothing was too big or too difficult or too hard. So, you know, just really, you know, fond memories of Catherine and what she was doing, and just the support that she gave everyone. You know, quiet, you know, never assuming, never asking for anything, but always there if you needed her and you wanted to. So, thank you, Catherine, and thank you for being there for us. So, just, if there's anyone else, otherwise I'll ask Mum to come up.
There's one more.
Oh, one more? Okay.
Oh, sorry,
Right.
warm up.
Mum can warm up
Sorry,
as you come up.
I actually wasn't going to speak, but I need to outdo McGregor on the donkey story.
Okay.
So I'm Sheena, and Chris will remember Catherine never asked us for anything apart from, can you help me move my donkeys, we're going to the Chathams. So it was one of the funniest things you've ever seen in your life. I managed to drive the horse truck and reverse it into Chris's loading yards, which was a complete fluke, and I couldn't remember. I just thought I did, and Chris was going perfectly lined up, and I was thinking, how did I do that? But anyway, Catherine said they'll be really easy to load on, and we've given them to people down the road that make cheese, a wonderful couple, want them for their children, and so could we get these donkeys on? No, we could not, Chris, do you remember? So they were on the loading bank, and Catherine was pushing, and Chris was pushing, and I was pushing, and then finally, after some time, Catherine pushed them onto the truck, and I shut the door. And she was in the truck, remember? And she was like, are you going to let me out? And I said, no. You're going to travel with your donkeys down the road while I drive this truck. I'm not opening that door because it took so long to get them in. And so I made Catherine stand in the back of the truck, rattling away down the road with the donkeys. And then I opened the side thing to let them out, and the side door, and first jumped Catherine, going like that. So it was a very, very funny story. Two other small stories that I'd like to probably shouldn't share, but will. Was I had the uncanny knack to need Catherine when she wasn't on duty with the ambulances. One was when I got kicked by a horse and I was too scared to look at my injury, so I went up to Chris and Catherine's and with my arm in a towel. And I said two things. First of all, pour me a really huge Chardonnay, because I knew there would always be one on tap. And I said, and then look at my hand and tell me whether you think I need to go to the hospital. And this is when Catherine's humour came in, so I drank a glass of Chardonnay and then another. And then she said, right, show me to take the towel off, and I put my hand down and I said, do I need to go to the hospital? And she said, well, it depends. And I said, on what? She said, whether you want that bone sticking out for the rest of your life. So back into the back of Catherine's little car, and no ambulance off to the Masterton Hospital. And then the second time I had to get Catherine to help when she wasn't on the ambulance was when my dog bit my son. And it was 1 o'clock in the morning, and my son woke me up and went, Mum, Stinky bit me again. And I said, go back to bed, he's always biting you. And he goes, but Mum, it's worse this time. I didn't have the light on. I said, honestly, Gregor, go back to bed. And he went, but Mum. And I went, oh. And I got out of bed, turned the light on, and he was standing in the pool of blood. Oh. Catherine! I know it's pretty late, but Stinky's bitten Gregor, and it's pretty bad. So once again, in a little green car this time, middle of the night, off we went to the hospital. So yes, Catherine was just absolutely fantastic, and she was my own personal ambulance. So farewell, Catherine, and thank you for those. And thank you, Chris.
Okay. Mum, you want to come up?
Mum's getting a bit older, which was a wonderful invention, these walkers. They're better than walking sticks. Well, after all that we've heard this afternoon, I am proud, but very humble too. It's just amazing. I thought about it and thought, yes, she kept busy and did a lot, but she did a lot more. I thank you to each of you that have spoken today. It's been a very special time. I think we've all learnt a lot, and I thank the people for the phone calls we've had, the cards, the messages and the tributes. I thank those that have organised the day today, my children and her girlfriends, Catherine's friends, what they've put together, Pam and Andrew Shackleton, I thank them for their kindness too. And those that have travelled for today, especially Chris across the Tasman, Carol from the South Island, Kath and Jeanette that have come down, and some others that have travelled too. It's very special. I just had to jot down a few things from reminders that I've had as you've told your stories. One thing that stands out, and it stood out in the tributes that the people in the Chatham Islands have put on to the tribute page, and it's the same lovely words that so many people have said here. Chris and Catherine, Chris had been to the Chathams before and he knew about it, but they have fitted in so well into the community there and just been loved and been made to fit. You're not Maori and you're not Moriori, you're New Zealanders, but we still love you and you've just melted into that community so well. A couple of things. The ambulance always amazed me with Catherine and the work she did. She had her work at the vineyards during the daytime, but they'd get night duty and weekend duty. And I never ever heard Catherine complain about how tired she was. She could get a call in the middle of the night and then come back home and turn up at work the next morning and work all day. And you never ever heard her complain about that. I seem to remember the days of her working with Clive at Atarangi. I think at the very beginning of the vineyard there, they grew vegetables and sold tomatoes at the gate, I think was one story, that just helped the cash flow a little bit. So there's always some invention that Catherine could organise. I'm an Australian, as most of you know, one of the vets, New Zealand vets that brought an Australian wife back to New Zealand. I was always told I had a warped sense of humour, and I think maybe I passed it on to Catherine. When they wanted a photo of Catherine, this one here, and I went through my photos and I couldn't find anything. She was terribly hard to be able to get a photograph of. She'd get into groups, but to take a photo, and I'd look through mine, and I think Debbie looked through what she had, and it was very difficult. And then this one turned up, and I thought, wherever was that? And it was taken in Diane McGregor's kitchen when they were down having a cooking session, and Di said it's amazing that it was still on a camera, because she used to take several photos of Catherine doing things, cooking, but if Catherine got a chance, she would get Di's camera and delete anything. So that's a very special camera that lasted the distance. As I say, I'm jumping around a little bit, but it is as you spoke. In amongst the other things that Catherine learned, I think she did a course in house painting, and she did a course in concreting, isn't it? Probably, yes. She was so busy he didn't know what she was doing some of the time, I think, and what she was learning. But she used to paint their house out at Waiters Road. I remember going out and ladders up and things and seeing her do that. She was a very good daughter, and I think she went to Sunday school here in this hall. She taught Sunday school, and as she got on a bit older, She drifted away from church activity. She wasn't keen on the terminology bums on pews, and it wasn't her scene. But I think that Catherine lived the part of what she'd learnt about Christianity, she put into practice for all that she did for other people here and in the Chatham Islands as well. Just one little story about Catherine, and I've told this story many times and you will have heard it, some of you, and I won't do it anymore, Catherine, after today. When she went to school, started school, and she had a teacher, and when she went back for her second year at school, she had the same teacher, and she came home one day and she was a bit puzzled, and she said, was Mrs. X her teacher? She said, she got married at Christmas, didn't she? And I said, yes, she did. We went to the wedding. And she pondered a bit more, and she said, she's gone all year and hasn't had a baby. Do you think she's spayed? In the vet clinic, and he'd have, if he wasn't terrifically busy, he'd let them do things, cut sutures and things with the animals, and so I had to say to Ivan, you haven't finished the story. And I hear she's more than once put some stitches in dogs with tears in them in the Chatham Islands. There's no vet on the Chatham Islands, and in emergency she's stitched the occasional dog up. So I think we've got lots of lovely things to remember from today, and I'm very proud of that and of her, and I think her father would have been if he had been still here, and the siblings, I'm sure, have also learned something. Chris might have learned something too about the woman. So thank you all very much indeed. Sorry about this, but the joints work better than they do with a walking stick.
So I'd like to, on behalf of the family, invite you all just for some food. There's some out already, and there'll be tea and coffee served through here. Hopefully, us that provided the food, Jenny, Joe, Di, Jocelyn, and Jess and Monique, who helped in the kitchen. Hopefully we've learnt from Catherine how to prepare it, and we've made her proud. There are a few staples: pecan pies, fish cakes. You can't apparently have something without a fish cake. And there's some cupcakes, which I'm sure Di, thank you. You've learnt a lot from Catherine on how to prepare and decorate them. We also token sprinkle of greenery, because apparently you can't not have a little sprinkle of greenery on the food, because it just makes it stand out and look really good and really flash. So thank you, Catherine, for teaching us that, and hopefully we've done you proud with the spread of food that we've got there, because we know that you would have if you'd been here. As I said, if you want to have a toast for Catherine afterwards, Andrew and Pam have made their place available if you want to take along something to toast her. They live on 28 Daniel Street, which is just over that way, for those that aren't just a little bit turn right off Jennifer Street as you go back. Apparently you can spot their place. There's a big bottle of TK wine on the fence. Apparently it still has wine in it, but it's a bit suspect as to whether it's really good or not. So I'd suggest you leave that there at the gate, and maybe go down the gate and toast them something else. I'm going to attempt another reading just to close, and then I will ask Jess
One moral support.
And then Jess will bless the food, and then if we can just ask that we just maybe put a few chairs away, some of the younger ones can help us do that, just to make a bit of space so everyone can stand around and chat. And it's really lovely that the sun's come out, so I think, you can go out on the lawn as well. make some space, but yeah, it's nice to see the sun out. Okay, okay, so just yeah. So it's entitled to those whom I love and those who love me. When I'm gone, release me, let me go. I have so many things to see and do. You mustn't tie yourself to me with too many tears, but be thankful we've had so many good years. I gave you my love, and you can only guess how much you've given me in happiness. I thank you for the love that you have shown, but now it's time I travelled on alone. So grieve for a while, if you grieve, you must. Then let your grief be comforted by trust. It is only for a while that we must part, so treasure the memories within your heart. I won't be far away, for life goes on, and if you need me, call and I will come. Though you can't see or touch me, I will be near, and if you listen with your heart, you'll hear all my love around you, soft and clear. And then when you come this way alone, I'll greet you with a smile and a welcome home. Okay, so this
Ko e ronga te karakia, tākina te karakia. E rongo, ho mai nā tipu hei whakakiti, tīnana hei o ranga, auweki, hui e tāki e.
Thank you everyone.